guys, it's your best boxing friends. I'm Kelsey. This is Rachel. Rachel, sober and reality hit boxing this week as we lost two guys from injuries that they sustained in a fight. Both Maxim Dadashev and Hugo Santillan died after being in a boxing, after doing what they do, after being in this sport. And just a sobering reality is all I can really think about how dangerous a sport boxing is.
Yeah, I think it's a reminder of just really like what goes on, what fighters are sacrificing every time they get into the ring. And sometimes, as fans, as fighters, as whoever, we may not always be aware of that.
Yep.
And I think that, yeah, it's just a reminder of just how dangerous this is and what's done when we're kind of caught up in maybe other things that aren't as important.
Yeah, there's definitely been renewed calls for more safety measures in boxing. Um, Most of those calls are typically emotionally based things that I don't think really do anything or aren't really capable of even being implemented in the sport. But I saw something from Andre Ward, who is now one of the veteran analysts in the game, talking about the weight cutting, how much of a toll that has on fighters. And maybe, so the idea around cutting weight, they used to do weigh-ins during, on the same day as the fight. And then we had a tragedy in boxing. They moved it back to the day before.
Right, because people were then fighting while
Yeah.
while they had just weight cuts.
So
they weren't rehydrated. They weren't all this.
So the idea is to allow them. But now you've got situations where maybe guys are fighting weight classes they really don't even belong in. They can put on like up to 20 pounds overnight,
Yeah.
make the weight limit. And so Andre Ward's idea was more about allowing fighters, maybe going back to the same day weigh-in, but allowing fighters to take IVs and stuff because they have science that you can replenish that they don't let you do now in boxing. So I think that that's a noteworthy idea. Another idea that I've seen is just about, I mean, the biggest idea that comes to my mind is really, do we need more of a central authorization in boxing, a governing body over all of professional boxing? One that at least can monitor things. For example, one of the fighters who died over the week had fought in one country, was knocked out or hurt to the point where he was suspended indefinitely, goes to another country and doesn't have to serve that out. So I think there's things that definitely
Or not too long ago, like we had a fight that was made in Vegas but couldn't be made anywhere else in the United States. I can't remember.
Yeah,
what
there's
that
two.
Was. But like that, it's a common thing that happens.
I think it's, yeah. I mean, you never want to see somebody die tragically in anything where it could be preventable. So I think that it's always good to think about measures and how we can prevent this type of thing.
Well, and speaking to that, I think it's really beneficial in these situations that although there is a lot of emotion and that's okay, to be aware of the importance of letting people discuss and talk this out. So a lot of times I feel like when things like this happen, that it ends up being seen as like, well, it's only okay to talk about this if you, like, the loudest voices that are heard will be the ones who are like, this is wrong and we shouldn't do this. But that doesn't really allow change to go into effect because it doesn't allow people to really talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you shame people and ridicule them for being on, like, just sharing thoughts, then we can't ever move forward. So like somebody might say, okay, like Andre Ward gives like his 2 cents, right? Well, somebody else might come in and be like, oh, that's just ridiculous. You guys, like, we can't, just because this one thing happens, we can't like change boxing forever. And what will happen is I feel like that person will get roundly like ridiculed and be like, oh, that's, you can't say that. Like, that's not okay to say. And that's like a form of shaming. And what it does is it silences, and you can't have debates, you can't have discussions unless you have more than one viewpoint.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
Yeah,
this problem isn't going to be solved by all cap Twitter posts
right.
that are full of emotion and anger or outrage over somebody else's opinion about the same situation. It's just going to take. Now, boxing has gotten safer over the years. I mean, this is also just a natural progression of a sport.
Hmm.
This, the same thing is happening in the National Football League, right? They went
Right.
all these years not really understanding the toll that the NFL and football in general has on professional athletes. And then, of course, once they had the evidence, they weren't super invested in maybe talking about it because
Right.
they're projecting their product. That makes sense. But guys in the NFL might not die on the football field or a couple of days later, but they do die. I think of Junior Seau, a great middle linebacker for the San Diego Chargers when I was growing up. He suffered so many concussions, and the things that come with all that ended up in him taking his own life. So we do have other sports that are dangerous that cause deaths and that are otherwise preventable. So I think that it's just a sad time right now. We certainly want to honor the guys that chose to do this with their life. I do think that um, there's a lot of everybody, me and Rachel and everybody out there is going to die someday. And I do think that a little bit of some of what we see is something around people not really thinking about death. Death is a part of life, right? Death is going
You're
to
saying
happen to
some of
everybody.
the strong
Yes,
reactions we see are people who
we're
maybe are
sheltered
uncomfortable
from,
with death.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and I understand that, I get that. Um,
And that doesn't mean like that we're saying nothing needs to change in boxing
no,
or
no, no,
that we're
no,
making any like
no.
judgments like that.
Of course not. All I'm saying is that I was getting to the fighters themselves, and I can't speak for the fighters themselves because they're no longer here. But I do know in my own life, I've been in situations and I've made choices in my life to do certain things that I wanted to do. And I know from hearing fighters talk often that they feel the most alive when they're in a boxing ring. They feel like that's the thing. Again, I can't speak for these guys, but what I'm getting at is if I, Kelsey McCarson, have this thing that I want to do, the thing I choose to do with my life, and that ends up taking my life, I think for me, if that happens for me, that's better. That to me sounds better than other ways that I could possibly die, right? So what I'm saying is that this thing that happens in our sport, we need more preventative measures, definitely. But I just want to honor the, I guess, the experience of these people's lives who certainly followed their dreams and maybe have didn't achieve their dream, right? We don't. Most guys that come into professional boxing don't end up Floyd Mayweather, but that doesn't minimize at all their journey, their experience, what they did accomplish. And I just want to kind of honor their place in our sport that we love and just kind of leave it there, like leave them in an honored position of having lived their lives and chosen their lives and moving on like we all will to the next phase of life or to the next phase of existence, I guess I'll say, in our life.